Welcome to another episode of Left versus Right. Anthony Weiner on our left, James Flippin on your right. James, it's a whole new world out there. Since we met last, we now have a new president with a whole bunch of new stuff going on. We could do 3 hours with no problem today, so we got to cram it into an hour. Let's start out at the top. Inauguration Day. The president gave that speech indoors because he was too soft to do it outdoors and wasn't going to get a big crowd. He had his cabinet there, but sitting in front of them, a bunch of tech bros, and then he gave a speech that was angry and not very conciliatory to the rest of us who didn't vote for him. That's my takeaway. What's yours?
Well, I certainly don't think that I see it exactly the same way. I was a little bit surprised, I guess, by all the tech bros, as you say, being there. But, you know, I definitely think that there's some momentum between the tech sector and Trump and his new administration, a lot of hope and optimism amongst investors, for example, that there's going to be a lot of runway here for those tech bros and their companies and AI and all that kind of stuff. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But in terms of the speech, I actually thought it was great. It was nice and tight. It was only about 30 minutes long.
Sleepy, very sleepy. When he reads off a teleprompter, he has just got no energy.
He's not as good when he's not just off the cuff. There's definitely something to be said for that. And I think a lot of people would understand that. You get into that trap of you're kind of reading as opposed to speaking and that type of stuff. But look, I think his message was kind of, as you say, a little bit antagonistic of the previous administration. He didn't do anything to reach across the aisle and say this is a day of unity, we're coming together. None of that. It was basically a State of the Union speech ripping Biden. Well, he made statements that this is kind of a greatest hits type thing for him, where we're going to be respected again, we're not going to get taken advantage of, America is going to be winning again, and that's everybody, right?
That's not
the MAGA voters or whatever.
No, but
it's all of America.
He did this whole thing, how bad everything is under the last administration, which was a campaign speech. This is a very special speech in American history, in American iconography.
What makes you say that?
Because it's always been one hand that gets elected reaching across the aisle to the people that didn't vote for them to unify the country.
What happens if they make that kind of speech and it's complete BS, like when Biden said that he was going to aim to unite the country and that did absolutely nothing?
Hey, I'm not saying that a speech is a panacea for all that ails us. I'm saying it's a sign of class. Okay. It's a sign of dignity. It's a sign of respect. Remember, most of America did not vote for this guy.
Sure. Well, but at the same time, he won the election, and that's the key. And he's laying out what his agenda is going to be and how he's going to aim to accomplish certain things while in office. Now, if that's not your cup of tea for the inauguration speech,
it wasn't the cup of tea for Democrat or Republican presidents in American history. We have a long, proud, nourishing tradition of using that day, except when your thugs, try to stop it from happening, using that day to unite the country, bring us together again after a tough election. He thinks he's still in campaign mode. Look, he sat there. He stood there for 12 minutes of droning on like he was sleepwalking through it because he was reading what Miller wrote for him. And it was relatively easy to say to the rest of the country that were not his supporters, here's what we have for you. And what we have for you is a hand of
what's that supposed to be? What is that you're offering to the left in terms of their political agenda?
No, not the left. The majority of the country that didn't vote for him.
What is it that you're supposed to offer?
You're supposed to offer a message of unity because we are, they wait for it, United States of America. If you don't respect that principle, join your cult leader. He doesn't either.
You don't have to like his policies or agree with his policies. The mandate says that those are the policies that are coming. So when he lays out what his agenda is going to be. Winning the national popular vote. Yes.
What mandate was that exactly? Yeah. How was it? 1.3%. Was it also a mandate?
You can nitpick if you want to.
Call it a mandate.
Margin of victory, whatever it may be. People are sick and tired of the unfettered access to the southern border. That was shut down day one. People are very upset about the growth of prices. Opening up domestic drilling is going to attack that.
Excellent point. We're going to get to those other issues. But before we go off the sermon, you kind of glossed over the idea that basically the first row, the honored place, it didn't go to some hero of some soldier. It went to the head of Facebook, the head of Twitter, the head of Google, the head of MMA, whatever. Do you think, Mr. Republican, regular libertarian guy, these are popular or iconic figures in American life? These tech guys that 5 minutes ago, until your cult leader told you otherwise, you hated?
I think
you hate
that there's-
Zuckerbucks.
I think
You've
that
called them
there-
Zuckerbucks more times than I can remember.
Well, I think that there's definitely a desire amongst the Trump administration to kind of get in the good graces of what's coming for the economic future of America.
I'm
We just
asking
saw that
you.
with the infrastructure
I'm
investment
asking-
that's coming on behalf of AI.
I'm asking you.
Do I have any problem with who is
Do
sitting
you
there?
have?
No.
Did you have that?
I never
that-
once noticed before whoever was sitting in certain
Right,
rows.
the
at
cabinet
inauguration.
officers are in the back row, and
I wouldn't know that
That's right.
because when it's sitting out, when you're out there on the front steps of the Capitol, I'm looking at the president and their huge dais. I don't know who's sitting where. It doesn't
You
matter
did, but
to
you
me.
saw this time.
But it doesn't matter. No one cares.
Okay, no one cares.
No.
Okay. Generally speaking, it speaks to the values of the guy holding the job.
moment of that day that I loved the most was when Trump said, look, the spirit of the frontier runs through America. When you think about 13 colonies on the edge of the frontier, on the edge of civilization that became the world's most powerful nation and the world's most influential nation, both culturally, financially, whatever you want to say, that's a major historical success story, one that runs through the backbone of the United States.
That's lovely. That's a
you're moving
unifying
that
message.
forward.
Maybe the next time maybe next time James Flippin should give
But
it.
you said there was no unifying message.
No,
That's
he
how he
didn't.
closed.
Okay, fine. He closed by saying something about the 13 original colonies. I'll leave this table if he even knows what they are. He's probably the world's. I mean, then he went down the stairs.
I would take that bet. I'm
and
pretty sure he
rambled.
can identify the 13 colonies.
Then he went downstairs and rambled on for like 2 hours about everything under the sun, including making the U.S. the owner of TikTok.
Well,
But
I said I liked the 30-minute speech. It was nice and tidy.
And it was nice and tight. All right, let's. By the way, this week, as has become my thing, I am starting to come up with cool titles for our different
Yeah,
subjects.
I like your titles.
We are going to have to
Well, I
have.
don't like your titles, but I think they're well
We're
crafted.
going to have Eric put in a little card that slides in with the new hipster title. So the second one is Job 1, Birthright, question mark. And then I wrote, nah, birth wrong. So
Very clever.
Thank you very much.
The Daily News is going to be calling you up.
Please remain seated. Remain seated. And what that is a reference to is almost immediately got to work on immigration. One of his arguably the signature issue, the issue he thinks got him elected. And he did a bunch of things, some of them that were lawful, some of them were not. In the category of something that's not, doesn't seem to be lawful, he says, I am going to, with executive order, I am going to eliminate birthright citizenship. Now, what's that about this? I'm going to executive order. I'm going to change the Constitution. Explain to me a little bit about what you think his thinking is.
Well, because I think that in essence, there's some constitutional law debate there as to what is birthright citizenship. How does that apply to various people? For example, the 14th Amendment, which was one of the Civil War amendments, sought to address the unique situation that the U.S. found itself in then when chattel slavery was coming to an end. And tragically, heartbreakingly, historically, we know slaves were not considered people. They were considered property. So what do you do with people, humans, that up until this point have not been subject to the jurisdiction of the United States? They said with the 14th Amendment, boom, this is how we're going to do it. Anybody who was brought here against their free will and their descendants qualifies for citizenship. They are, in fact, citizens of the United States. So the question then becomes, what happens if mom and dad, in this instance, migrate to the U.S. while mom is pregnant, and they did so illegally, but the child is then born here in the U.S.? Wouldn't you say, under the 14th Amendment, that child is a U.S. citizen? Some people say yes. Some people say no, because the parents in that hypothetical scenario would have been subject to the jurisdiction of, you name it, Ireland, France, China, South Africa, whatever you want to pick, there's already a jurisdictional precedent that they're subject to. So it's an interesting question that'll go all the way to the Supreme Court.
Well, just in case any of our listeners are still awake after that long wandering road down some weird interpretation of the 14th Amendment, let me read it, and you tell me why it's so complicated. All persons born or naturalized and subject to the jurisdiction thereof.
There you go. That's the key. That phrase is key. Subject to the jurisdiction thereof.
They are. That means anyone here must follow the law. Come on, settle down. I don't know what you're hanging your hat on. Anyone here has to follow the laws. Are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. That's what it says. All persons born or naturalized and subject to the laws of our country are citizens of the United States and the state where they reside. That just means that if you are a foreign, that part is if you're a foreign national who is in an embassy or something like that, it's not subject to our laws. But if you're subject to our laws, which they all are citizens of the United States, there's no controversy about this. Never has there been a court.
So you're saying it's going to be a 9-0 decision when it gets to this?
No, I mean I don't. the lower court basically laughed at the lower court already when they enjoined this, said, one, they said it's ridiculous, but two, they said any lawyer that put pen to paper on this knew it was not lawful and laughed them out of court so far. Now, you want to tell me that the wholly owned subsidiary of the Supreme Court, which is lawless at this point, will shred the Constitution again? Yes. The Constitution.
You've got no problem with some lefty judge in Seattle saying that this is the law of the land, but you're objecting to the 9 judges.
Hold on a second. Hold on. Let's focus on what it says. And I asked James Flippin and Anthony Weiner. Those are our names right there. And you said, "Oh my God, it's so freaking complicated." And I read it. And if we have
laid out exactly where the argument's going to hinge on.
There is no hinging. There's no argument. No court has ever held what you're saying. You might find it in some. Again, you are really good. One of the reasons you're good on this show, and generally a good person. I think you're a nice person.
Thank you. I feel the same
one of the things you're good at is climbing into the darkest crevices of the internet ass and saying, "Oh, look at this! I found some fecal matter which I can carry into the show today." I'm reading from the Constitution, something that I don't know. James Flippin used to say back in the day before he was following his cult leader. He used to describe himself as a constitutionalist. All persons born and naturalized and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Do you know how long this has been on the books? Since the 14th Amendment, okay? So, and it hasn't been
like 150
It hasn't been challenged past the joke at a neighborhood bar. And now your president, by the way, who thinks he can do it with an executive order. You guys have to go back and watch Constitution Rock. What was that on Sesame Street? On Constitution Rock? No,
you're talking about Schoolhouse Rock.
Schoolhouse Rock. Yeah, that's about the level that your team seems to understand this. But all right, we'll see what winds up happening because it's just one of many things that he's that
One thing I'll just add to the discussion is that the U.S. and Canada are basically the only two nations that continue to honor so-called birthright citizenship. And the reason that it's controversial is because there's such a thing as anchor baby, where basically families enjoin to have their child become a U.S. citizen by more or less migrating for pregnancy or giving birth, and then the family is more or less tied to the U.S. in some lawful way. How are you going to support the entire family?
Yes.
So it's a sticky issue.
It's some constitutional. Things you don't like about the Constitution. I'm not surprised you don't like the 14th Amendment. You guys don't seem particularly fond about black people. You don't seem particularly fond about people having equal protection of the law. You don't seem to like the 14th Amendment. You don't like the part about insurrection in there either. You don't like the 14th Amendment. You don't like the Constitution. I get it. There's only one party left that really does. So to be like, I don't like that part of it, that people get to come here and be citizens. Yeah, I get it. You don't like it, and you think that if you elect one guy to lead your cult, he can, with a stroke of a pen, amend the Constitution.
The key is to know that if you are in a democratic jurisdiction, you can just choose not to observe certain laws, like being a citizen of the United States and how that's required for certain instances. That doesn't matter in places that are sanctuary states, sanctuary cities.
It also isn't required at the Gap. You're going to say that the Gap is not an American company because they don't check people for their papers when they come in?
When they go into shop?
Yeah.
I don't understand the comparison.
You're making some point that, the New York is so weird because they don't check people's papers as they're walking the street. Neither does Missouri, my brother.
They actually have said that you're not to even interact with or work with immigration and customs officials to enforce the law. So yeah, it is basically picking and choosing what you're going to
No, that's not true. They're all. Tell me what other federal laws the state of Missouri follows. The state of Missouri follows Missouri law. The state of New York follows New York law. The state of Florida, if the federal government wants to come in and enforce their own laws, they can certainly do it. That's why we have federal courts. As much as you try to make it seem,
interesting interpretation.
Unless you try, see, this is the problem. It's so deeply ingrained, the rhetoric of these campaigns. You don't realize it's wafer thin. Like, they're not cooperating. What do you mean cooperating? No, the ABC studio isn't cooperating. It's not our job to enforce the laws. It's not the job of New York beat cops.
It actually is the job of New York cops to enforce the laws.
It is not the job of New York beat cops to enforce federal law. That's not the way it works. We have the FBI for that. You don't like the FBI. That's the problem.
I will when Kash Patel's confirmed.
ICE you don't like.
Coming this week, baby.
Why do you care so much about localities enforcing federal laws? All that the state of New York says is the same thing every other state says, is we're not going to You have your civil enforcement things you're going. We get enough stuff to worry about around here without us picking and choosing which. For next thing you don't want them enforcing FCC laws and kicking us off the air because I beat you like a rented mule every week. I don't think we're going to quite do that. We only
violating violence statutes.
We only have about a minute before we have to go up against Rick. I thought here's my third one. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do the title.
Yeah,
I'll do the title.
It'll be a tease.
And then actually we have a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Job 2: Make America cheap again? Question mark. Tariffs, NDV tax credit, and throwing out undocumented workers. All of those things are going to make life in New York, in America, more expensive. How do those two things fit together?
Well, I'm wondering, is that, just to understand the headline in and of itself, is that cheap a double entendre? Like, are you saying, like, not just lower in price, but shoddy and bad quality?
No. I meant that he keeps saying, I'm going to bring down inflation on day one. Mm-hmm. All right, day one came, and he did nothing but do things to raise prices.
Well, what makes you say that? Why?
I'm saying tariffs, add 10% on the price of your avocados coming from Mexico. And the EV tax credit, make it more expensive to buy American cars. 3, throw out workers that work at plants that make our stuff. So now they're going to have walk-offs. They're going to lose their workers, and they're going to have to slow down production or hire new workers. These are all things that are bad for our economy, right?
Am I responding now, or are we waiting for the other side?
I had it wrong. We actually do have a couple of minutes.
Okay, so all right. The key is,
and that's all the time we have. We'll be right. No, just go ahead. Go ahead.
When it comes to immigration enforcement, right? There's actually a concern there, and part of why it's a good thing for American workers is that it stops artificial wage depression. So if you have an entire workforce of illegal work units, people who aren't legally qualified to work, that depresses wages. Because
legally
in essence,
qualified to work? What do you mean? Like, what does it take to qualify to pluck feathers off a chicken?
So in other words, if you're not working within the same structure as someone who's legally employed and has the same
these are jobs that can't be filled with migrants are filling.
That's not true, though.
Ask the people that are hiring them. They're hiring whoever they can get to do these jobs.
But are they going to pay lower wages like they do in the black market for labor? Or are they going to pay higher wages for Americans?
This is mythology. There's all of the laws about minimum wages and work conditions all exist in these big factories. These are not tiny places. Tyson has 2,500 people, they estimate, that are probably working on fake Social Security numbers because they can't get anyone else to pluck their chickens, right? So once those people get thrown out, this idea that, oh my God, there's a whole bunch of chicken pluckers out there that are all lily white who are going to walk into those jobs. That's not the way the economy works. Mm-hmm. You believe in the marketplace. The reason these jobs are getting filled up with those people is they're willing to pick the strawberries, pick the almonds. That's why we've had migrant workers forever.
Well, again, you do have the discrepancy between immigrating to jobs and immigrating to welfare. So you've always had that discrepancy that was made by economists such as Milton Friedman, who said if you're going to have the ability to illegally immigrate in order to work jobs, you also have to take away the benefits.
You don't get welfare when you're here now without documentation. You can't apply for welfare. That's such a myth.
That's the key.
Like, what is this? The left and Archie Bunker? That's a myth. No one goes and applies for welfare without documentation that they're citizens.
So what's going on? What's been going on in New York for the last 3 years?
The only difference about New York, and I have to explain this to you one more time, I'm going to put a gun in my mouth. Mm-hmm. The only difference in New York City is New York City, by the way, is where migrants disproportionately want to go under any circumstances. Mm-hmm. But we have a law in this city that no one else has. It's actually a consent decree that requires us to provide them housing. That's it. That's it. They have that. As a result, we have less street homeless than they do in California.
So you're saying that there is no such similar crisis of spending in, let's say, like Denver, Colorado?
Migrants are net adders to our economy, not take away. They put in more in taxes that they get no benefits from than they take away in services. Study after study after study shows this, including the Manhattan Institute, which is a conservative think tank.
The other point that you alluded to was the price of energy, I think.
EV tax credits.
EV tax
It's a tax cut. You guys like tax cuts. It's tax cuts to buy American cars. Why? Now he's getting rid of them?
Well, because it's market manipulation. In other words, if you have true desire or demand amongst consumers to buy EVs, then they're going to buy the EVs.
We give tax credit to encourage people to buy American products all the time, brother.
Right.
I'm sorry.
This is specific to the one industry.
We do that also. We have a giant tax cut that we give to people to buy homes, for example.
Basically, what I'm saying is the amount of spending on the so-called green agenda is outsized in terms of what it actually should be, and it's inflationary because of the government spending.
Subsidy to
the most important aspect of inflation is government spending.
That's fine. The only problem is this is a $7,500 tax cut to Americans that's now going away, and we'll be right back. So welcome back to Left versus Right. All this year, Anthony Weiner and James Flippin, all this year as the new Trump administration starts, there's going to be a ton of news. James Flippin has been all over it. So if you like what you hear in the opinion shows or don't like what you have in the opinion shows, you can still always tune in to us to get the news breaks. And one of the biggest news stories of 2021 was January 6th, of course. We all watched it with our own eyes. We saw those horrific images. It's taken a while. Some of the cases are still going through, but basically Donald Trump said that we're ending all of the cases around that day. 1,600 some odd people got pardons or commutations. And I think that if it were people who just went into the Capitol, pooped on the ground, or stole Nancy Pelosi's pen, I don't think there would be that much of an issue around it. Some of us
mostly was. I mean,
not the people that were
going with this. Like two-thirds were people who just kind of walked in.
Correct, and they were not in prison. So those people were not let out of prison. Those people were not in prison to begin with. Those people were charged mostly with lower-level crimes and were done.
Okay,
those people were not imprisoned.
All right.
The only people that were in prison.
That's
why you have me on the show, to be entirely sure about things.
Right, yeah.
So the people that were in prison.
There were people that spent time in prison who were not violent offenders, but
there were not. There really were not, unless they were in some way led to someone being harmed. They were not in. I don't think there were any actually. I mean, now you can say that some of the people that did the sedition, that they weren't actually there, but most of them were. There were people that were part of the conspiracy that were in a hotel room with guns in Virginia waiting to be called in. They were part of the planning. You want to say they were not part of the violence? I disagree with you. But I'll tell you who was part of the violence.
There was no sedition.
There was.
There was a group of Americans that went to express their
well, wait a minute. Hold on a second.
Yeah,
I know. You know better than a grand jury. You know better than a judge. You know better than the people who went to prison, who stood up in front of a court and admitted what they did. Okay? You know better than them. So let's believe James Flippin.
And you know all the circumstances behind whether or not they agreed to plead guilty. You know.
I don't know, but here's what I do know. I know that when Officer Caroline Edwards got beaten on the head with a bicycle rack by a member of the Proud Boys, she had brain damage and has not worked since. That when she stood up and when she said that, I believed her because I believe police officers, okay? And when police officers again and again were being subjected to metal whips, to bear spray, to being brutalized, I know that as a Democrat, I stand for the men and women of the blue, and I don't believe that those people should be called heroes, should be called patriots, and should be freed on the first day of a new administration. Because here's what I believe. I believe that if you're Democrat, Republican, or somewhere in
freed, by the way, commutations don't necessarily mean
let out of prison. And called heroes, and called prisoners, and called hostages,
political prisoners,
and called prisoner, and called hostages.
Right, that's right.
Okay, those people are scum, and I say that again. They're scum. Sue me. They are scum. These are police officers, and I don't want anyone ever to call themselves a Republican or conservative and say, our party is friends of the police. When the scum that beat the crap out of our police officers, when the whole world saw it, are now walking free. And not only are they walking free, they're saying, I'm going to go get guns. I'm going to go exercise my right. I'm going to walk around the Capitol as if I own the place. The same exact officers that protected your cult leader and all of the sleazeballs that supported him with buying Bitcoin that he put out, or meme stocks that he put out, or Nikes that he put out with his name on them. All of those sleazebags. I'm not done. All of those sleazebags that want to call themselves.
Anybody who would dare vote for Donald Trump is sleaze.
No.
Yeah.
You're not going to get away with this.
That's what you're saying.
Support. Either say it right now.
What?
You are not allowed to beat the crap out of a cop and get away with it. Say it right now.
And how many of those people?
You won't.
How many of those people that so-called beat the crap out of people went to prison?
What if it's one? Should that guy get out?
Let me ask you this, Anthony. How long do you go to prison when you assault a police officer?
I hope a long-ass time.
Most of the time in New York, it would be about 3.5 years.
Bullshit.
Yeah.
Look it up. Look it up. And that's how when they went to prison.
Arrest, that's about a year.
7, 8, 9, 10-year sentences. They were let out and called heroes. Are they heroes?
Are some of the people involved in January 6th
heroes? Are any of the people that beat up cops heroes?
Well, I wouldn't say that anybody who beats up a cop is a hero.
Thank you. That's why Donald Trump.
I just want to give a comparison to the audience the way I'm
you're
reacting
the
right
embodiment.
Now and the way you're acting. Why are you so upset?
Here's why.
Let me ask you something.
Because
Anthony.
I don't have Donald Trump in front of me.
Enough of this.
I don't have Donald Trump in front of me. I have you in front of me.
Did you ever react this way? After the summer of 2020, and the way cities were burned to the ground, police officers were killed, people were killed.
Do you want to do that?
Did you ever react this way?
Do you want to do?
I want to know.
Do you want to do assault?
Have you ever done that?
Do you want to do assault? Do you want to do assault on cops
Probably
in
not.
other circumstances?
Probably
I'll be
not.
glad to do that. Did
Probably
anyone
not.
ever call them a hero?
Probably not. How
Did-
many
did
of those
my
people? Oh,
president-
yes, they did.
Did my president?
Yes, they did. Your vice president raised money for them.
Yeah, that's a very
raised
different
money for them.
People
How
in
is that
jail for-
different?
People
How
in-
is that different?
You think it's the equivalent? Someone in prison
Let me tell you
for
something,
protesting and beating the crap out of a
The
cop.
only reason you
can't
care
even
about
say
it, the only reason you
can't
care,
even say
the
it. Look
only
at you.
reason you care about January 6th is because it happened in your precious U.S. Capitol.
No, it happened to police
precious
officers.
Federal D.C.
Those
Plenty
police
of assaults
officers.
happen.
I worked with those police
Let me
officers.
tell you
They
something,
put their
Anthony.
lives on the line for
Plenty-
you and me, even though you
plenty-
aren't worth it.
Plenty of. That's an interesting statement.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Very
Anyone
interesting
who will
statement.
turn their back on
Plenty
them
of
because their
police
cult leader
officers
says
were
so.
assaulted
You're full
during
of
the
it.
summer of 2020. How about a police precinct being burned to the ground in Seattle?
It is not even what we're talking about right
I
now.
see.
You know why you want to
'Cause you
change
don't
the
like the
subject?
equivalency. You don't like the equivalency.
Because it's not.
Because it didn't happen in federal
No.
D.C. It happened on Main Street.
It happened-
People's businesses were burned to the
a
ground.
police officer getting assaulted
Right.
is worse than a business being
And
closed
let me
down.
tell you something. People of the left who you're representing, they really care about police officers.
Hey, yet you lost it. You no longer have any ability to say you support
Okay.
the cops.
Hey, why
because
did-
you can't even bring yourself
why
to
did
say
President
you
Biden-
should be in prison
Why
if you
did
assault
President
the police
Biden
officer.
issue preemptive pardons for members of the January 6th committee? Why?
Let's finish this by looking into the camera and saying you should be in prison if you assault a cop.
You should not assault police officers.
You should
It's
be in
against the
prison.
law.
You won't say it.
It's against the law to
you
do that.
won't say it.
It's against the law
No,
to do
it's
that.
not.
To assault
No,
police
it's
officers?
not. Donald Trump says it's not.
It is against the law.
Okay, so they should be in
When you
prison for that.
pardon someone-
Should you be in prison for that?
That's what happens. When you pardon someone, it's an admission that something wrong was done.
Did these guys ever admit that?
Did the individuals
Did these guys ever admit that? He said he was going to look at all 1,200, 1,500 cases,
Right.
and they were going to do them individually.
Okay,
Did
so
any of them ever
let me
admit
ask
that?
you something.
No.
Why was a preemptive pardon issued for members of the January
Let's do one
6th
thing at a
committee
time.
then?
Can we finish this? Are you not going to look into the camera and say
I
that
already
someone...
said it's against the law to
No.
assault police
Should
officers.
they be in prison? When you assault a police officer, you should go to prison. Yes or
Here's
no?
the thing that you're leaving
No,
out.
just say it.
Here's the thing that you're leaving out from the January 6th discussion. You've heard of poison of the bad tree or the poison
Fruit of the poison tree.
Fruit of a poison tree. It happens in legal cases, right? Where if the testimony or evidence is garnered under false terms or false pretenses or illegally somehow, it ruins the entire case.
Stop it.
The key with
Stop it,
January
James.
6th
James, stop it.
is what am I?
This is
why am I
about a
stopping?
police officer
Why am I
being
stopping?
assaulted right in front of our eyes, and the guy that did it is walking the street. That's wrong. Just say it's wrong. Don't be so
is it
hypnotized.
wrong? Let me ask you this then. Is it wrong?
Why? Why are you going to ask me anything? Just say I agree with
All
that.
right.
That it is wrong that they
I'll
were
let
let
you
out,
speak.
and my guy did it, and just because he did it, I feel like I've got to embrace it because I'm in a cult
That's
that
not-
believes in beating the crap out of police officers if it's for Donald Trump.
If you want to go back and listen to past shows, I've been very consistent in saying that January 6th was an entire operation engineered by elements of the government.
So,
It was an
Officer Caroline
entrapment
Edwards,
event
who
at
has
the
brain
highest
damage
level.
to this day, getting beaten by a member of the Proud Boys, she's part of an inside operation.
How about Ashley Babbitt?
Ashley Babbitt was killed by Donald Trump.
Oh, I see. That's an interesting interpretation.
Yeah, we've done it before. I can do it again. We're not talking about Ashley Babbitt. We're talking about police officers who
right.
are beating the crap out of her for doing their job.
So you're really twisted up about the
Yes. Oh, yes.
600
and
defendants.
by the way, we have a conservative audience. A lot of retired police officers. A lot of police officers. They watch the video of their brothers and sisters getting the crap kicked out of them, and now they see those scumbags that did it walking free because your cult leader says you did it for me. It's not illegal. That is so un-American and so contrary to everything that I thought Republicans believe
Hey,
in.
if those former cops or certain type of way, whatever, if they have their political mindset changed, that's on them.
Their
That's up to them.
political mindset. This
Anthony,
is not politics.
Are you going to
James.
respond? Oh, it's all politics.
This
trust
is
me.
about cops getting the crap
Are you
beaten
gonna
out of them.
respond?
When I stood up for for September 11th victims, a lot of those firefighters and police officers, I didn't ask what their freaking party
Are you
was.
going to respond to President Biden issuing preemptive
Only if
pardons
I'm sure
for the
you're
January
not.
6th
I want to
committee?
give you one more chance. And then I'll be going to talk about Biden. I'll give you one more chance
I'm
to
probably
look
not
into
gonna
the
say you'll do
camera.
whatever it is you want.
I know
At this
that's
point,
it.
as a matter of fact,
Because
I'm
your
not gonna play
cult
your stupid
leader,
little game.
because your cult leader has decided that the Republican Party, and good, they should have this tied around their necks forever, had decided that when it comes to beating
I hate to tell you something.
beating mercilessly up a cop,
Anthony,
you're
I
not
hate to
only
tell
you're
you.
considered a hero.
I hate to tell you, but the thing that's hung around anybody's neck is the fact that President Biden said he would never. He criticized Trump during a debate in 2020 for the concept of issuing preemptive pardons, and then on his last day in office, issued a preemptive pardon for his scumbag brother, for members of the January 6th committee, for Dr. Fauci, for people who haven't even been charged with crimes.
Yeah, because
so what are you issuing a pardon for?
Because now we know he was right in that your guy has no respect for the law. He just wants vengeance.
But that's not what I'm asking. What are you issuing a pardon for?
How you're asking, and now I get the chance to answer. They turned out to be right that they needed to protect people from a guy who is a megalomaniac who believes that the judiciary is not about right and wrong. It's about persecuting and prosecuting your enemies. Now, I don't like him. I don't like the idea of preemptive pardon. I don't like any of that stuff. But to be honest with you, it's looking more and more like Joe Biden was exactly right. That your guy, for example,
That's hilarious.
Yesterday on Friday, Donald Trump took away the security detail for Fauci, right?
Right.
Now, he took away the security detail from the former Secretary of State in his administration, who intelligence said was being targeted by Iran. Okay? He doesn't care. He doesn't care who he gets hurt. He doesn't care who he persecutes. He believes that the federal government is his little militia. And you know what? You used to not believe that. Now you do, because as of January 21st, your cult leader is in charge, and so naturally you're wandering around like you're in a daze, and everything you said you believed in. You don't support cops anymore. You believe that corporations should run our country.
I used to think, and yet you seem to have no problem with the entirety of the leftist political sphere losing their minds over the concept of a preemptive pardon 4 years ago. And now it's all good.
Nobody lost their mind. I don't even know. Look, can I tell you something?
Oh, nobody? Really, Anthony? I could show you like an 8-minute long clip of news organizations where they had entire segments dedicated to how problematic a preemptive pardon would be.
Donald Trump.
But now it's fine because your cult leader did it.
Donald Trump is a whore. He sold pardons last time. And at the time, I'm like, look, I am in favor of mercy. I'm in favor of pardons. I'm not going to give him a hard time about it. But he sold them. The record is now replete with things not coming through a pardon office, not getting checked, people not even saying they're sorry. They just give some money to someone and they get out. Right. Okay. The president has Donald Trump has now for the last 3 years said, I am your vengeance. I'm going to prosecute these people for doing their job. Prosecuting a member of Congress for being on an oversight committee is insane. Prosecuting Fauci for being a doctor is insane.
Dr. Fauci lying about grants given to the Wuhan lab via the NIH Institute, and also suggesting that there's definitely no lab leak possibility and all that, lying about that. That's not his job.
It is his job. It is his job, but there's no other crimes. You didn't define a crime there.
I say. Lying and lying to a congressional committee, that's not a crime anymore?
If you think something's wrong, doesn't make it a lie, James.
Okay.
But now, okay, so you're going to go prosecute the guy for doing his job.
How about James Biden? Why did he get a preemptive
I don't think he should have do pardons for his family.
Oh, okay.
However, it's pretty clear now, after watching your president say that we believe that people who beat up cops are heroes, that he is so twisted, so demented that he's going to use the judiciary for all the wrong reasons.
Are you also suggesting that all the different people that President Biden pardoned, some of which were murderers and rapists, that he thinks they're all heroes? Is that just by issuing a pardon?
That's actually good. I hadn't even thought of that. You're exactly right.
That someone's a hero?
You're exactly right. The president, Donald Trump, pardoned the founder of Silk Road, who the evidence showed tried to have 5 people killed. And he ran a website that did.
You're talking about Ross Albright.
Ross Albright, that did human trafficking, drug selling, and selling of weapons to terrorists.
Well, he established the website.
That guy, that's exactly right, and was aware that this was going on and facilitated it, including trying to kill 5 people, put out contracts to kill 5 of his competitors. That guy is now going. Is now going. I'm sure you think, oh, that's brilliant. I think that's great because we, the Republican Party, we're now the drug dealing party.
No, actually, I think Ross Albright, all he basically did was establish a website and exercise his free speech rights. And in essence, because the internet is like that, people used it for bad means.
And he was aware of it.
And he was punished for that.
And he was aware of it.
That's not fair. That's simply not fair. Most people actually feel the same way from a libertarian perspective.
Hold on a second. When you
set up,
when you set up, hey, it certainly is. It certainly is among that little niche. This guy's a hero to some people who believe setting up a drug and terrorist network that allow people to then trade things so that we can't stop terrorists, or we can have human trafficking, or we can have murders for hire. Yes, the federal government, believe it or not,
that's an overly simplified aspect of the nuance surrounding the internet and freedom and privacy. We talked about it with TikTok.
It was 11 7-week trial. This is all in evidence. This is not a new thing. He was found guilty. We have laws. He violated the laws, and apparently, not such a bad law, even though the guy did human trafficking on that site.
All right. Well, anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this nitpicking of the pardons that Trump handed down. Since there really wasn't any scrutiny provided by Anthony regarding the Biden ones.
You just wait. You just wait. Let me see the next time. I wait. Tough on crime, James Flippin. Tough on crime, Republican Party. Back the blue, James Flippin. If you show up in this room for the Back the Blue ceremony, I'm going to walk in here and ask for a show of hands how many people think beating up a cop is okay.
Okay, and I just can't wait. I just can't wait for the truth regarding January 6th to come out.
Yeah, if you doubt it, you can go look at the video of Caroline Edwards, police officer, getting hit in the head with a bicycle rack by a member of the Proud Boys.
I said what I said.
Yeah, it's what you wouldn't say.
Looking forward to the truth.
It's what you wouldn't say that's even more telling, and we'll be right back. So welcome back to Left versus Right. Anthony Weiner on your left and James Flippin on your right. All of the programming here can be found at the Red Apple Podcast Network. My show, The Middle, which you just heard, James Flippin comes in with cuts and also helps out during the week and also has been filling in a great deal. And who knows, Morano's talking about running for office, Weiner's talking about running for office, and Sliwa, a lot of my mail is, we don't mind seeing you go get Flippin in there.
We're going to have like half the station filled up.
It's going to be, listen, I don't know if anyone upstairs listens to me or all I know is that a lot of the people that listen to our show.
Any developments there on your behalf?
Nothing, no news. But I do want to say, I was about to lob something in here. I get a lot of comments that people listen to The Middle and listen to this that say that you're their favorite host because I seem to let you talk, except for that last segment. That was a bad example. But anyway.
Sometimes you let me talk.
You can tune into all that stuff. So, speaking about having thoughts, the Bishop of Washington. She runs the Washington Cathedral. Bishop Miriam Budd,
the right bishop, right, or something.
Is
like
that something like that?
I was thrown off by that.
What is the sect?
Capital R. I don't know. It's a
Episcopal.
I think it is Episcopal.
I think it's Episcopal.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like Catholic Light, I believe.
Careful. We've offended enough people on this show already. I don't want to bring the.
I can say that as a Christian.
I don't bring the Episcopalians into this. Anyway, so they have a beautiful service at the National Cathedral, which is a beautiful building. I think it was one in honor of the new president because he's not much of a churchgoer, but he was there and the vice president was there. Anyway, none of the service got a great deal of attention until Bishop Budd had a few words to say, and she basically said, "Hey, listen, go easy on our brothers and sisters who are gay and transgender. They're living in fear."
That's a funny way of putting it.
Actually, you're right. You probably know more precisely. Why don't you do the setup? Because I'm just summarizing that she basically said that migrants are scared right now. There are a lot of people out there that are worried about what kind of and go easy on them, kind of. Well, why don't you do the setup?
Okay. First of all, I would just like to note that President Trump has been very open in discussing that he is a man of faith, that he is a Christian. I have no idea.
Yeah, he was selling Bibles during the campaign, so I'm sure he's.
That's true.
And as for his favorite Bible verses, I like all of it. Old and New Testament, yeah, those two.
I have no idea how often he goes to church. I really don't know.
He doesn't.
But that being said, the bishop, in essence, kind of had, a captive audience, right? She's the one up at the pulpit. She's the one who's speaking. And respect and decorum would require that you sort of just sit there and listen to what's being said.
Correct.
And you would expect as though it wasn't going to be a targeted political attack like you might hear on MSNBC or CNN, but that's exactly what unfolded. She more or less attempted to embarrass the president, attempted to shame him, attempted to make herself a media star, which it seems like that's what she's doing. And if you go back to 2020, when there was rioting going on in Washington, D.C. amid the anger at the death of George Floyd, you had video of this Bishop Buddy, on camera wearing her black mask saying we need Trump out of office. We need to eliminate Trump, take him out, get him out of office. Eliminate, I shouldn't use that word because she said we need to remove him from office, that type of thing. And, so she's a political operative. She's a political operative and she uses
What's the problem you've identified? I don't understand the problem that she spoke her mind.
Well, I mean, speaking someone's mind is certainly always fine,
totally
right?
Fine, right?
Speak your mind, but it's just that it was highly unusual, rude, targeted in its setting.
Give me the rude part. I watched it. She was soft in her voice. She didn't yell.
You could still be rude by being soft in voice. Trust me.
You mean she spoke to the supreme leader honestly and said truth to power?
Here's the thing: if she really had a heartfelt message that she felt it was important to deliver, She could have had an audience with Trump in private.
Wait, hold on a second.
She could have
So
done
you're
that.
saying that she shouldn't have said it so loud. Why? There's a long tradition of people speaking from the dais and saying things. I mean, Martin Luther King. We do it all the time.
All right. I mean, look.
And by the way,
if you don't have any objection to it, that's fine.
When did but the president did, because the president is a dandelion. The president is the thinnest skinned man.
I objected to it too. I mean, I don't.
Why?
Think of
Because
myself
you
as thin-skinned.
You're totally fine. You're totally fine hanging the Ten Commandments in school. You're totally fine having prayer in school. You're totally fine standing up and waving a Bible as you direct members of the National Guard to shoot protesters. But an Episcopal bishop stands up and has the audacity, says, "Be kindness to others," and quotes the Bible, and you're like, "Oh my God!"
But Anthony, that's not exactly what she was doing. She was more or less saying your political policies are wrong. I'm going to tell you why they're wrong, and let's go forward with me as the only one who can speak in this setting. You have to sit there and quietly take it. I'll tell you why you're wrong.
Yes,
and
that's what happens to politicians. That's the way it should happen. That people say power. It's called speaking truth to power.
As I was saying,
and by the way,
as I already said,
and you're wrong. You're only wrong if you're going to be mean to people who are transgender and gay.
This wasn't in the forum where you would expect those kind of comments.
Have you not been to church? Have you not heard a sermon? Sermons are constantly.
I've never heard a bishop or a reverend or a pastor singling out the person in the front row and attempting to make them feel small, evil, bad, whatever it may be. I've never seen that happen. No, never once in my time in church.
Let me make it easy for you. First of all, he is small. I can't imagine. And I don't think there's been a person in American history that's been smaller than Donald Trump. But that happens all the time. I'm an elected official. I would go to church services all the time and constantly. For
somebody who's small, it takes up a lot of your mind.
And constully, God, it's hard to do a show on January of 2025 and not talk
Plenty
about
of
Donald
other stuff to talk about.
We would have a problem getting this down to 2 hours, let alone whatever.
But I
don't blame you not wanting to talk about what your cult leader did this week.
I'm happy to talk about it.
It was humiliating.
I love it.
But it is not unusual, like this whole idea, oh my God, that never happens. It happens all the time. Churches are places where literally you talk about the Bible, about the Torah, about the Quran, and how the values should be practiced by your servants. Donald Trump is our servant. He is not our leader. He is our servant. We live in a republic, a democracy. This whole idea that, wait a minute, hold on, I'm going to cry because someone said something critical about me. This is the problem with your guy. He's a 9-year-old child, but I'll let you have the last word.
Well, it's just very interesting that the Bishop Buddy, didn't pause to mention the victims of illegal immigrants, people like Laken Riley, people who just had that, we just had that legislation passed in an attempt to get more violent criminals deported.
Let's do that,
It's interesting that she didn't mention that.
Let's do Laken Riley. It's not on our rundown. Could we do like 5 minutes on it? Or
Sure.
2 minutes? Maybe not 5 minutes. Something will have to be dropped. We'll drop Elon Musk's hand gesture since, I don't know.
Can we agree that was obviously not a Nazi salute?
Here's my thing. The whole argument, is he autistic or is he a Nazi? To be honest with you, here's my beef, and you may agree with this. I am fine with people criticizing it for making a Nazi salute, but I don't want to hear it from these lefties who are standing up for Hamas.
Yeah, we actually would agree on that.
Don't get so hot and bothered suddenly about people being Nazis.
That's sort of the point I made earlier this week. It's like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
We're going to suggest as though that's like something to object to?
I watched it like 50 times. I don't know. And if you have to watch something 50 times to know if it's a Nazi salute, then
it sounds like we're probably on the same page.
But not for nothing. Musk is an asshole. Get him out of here, please. I mean, let's have less of Musk. I mean, I don't know how he became your guy. It doesn't seem like your cup of tea. But anyway, let's do Laken Riley, even though it's not on here. Here's the thing about the Laken Riley thing. A lot of Democrats voted for it. It's going to become the law of the land. But I just want our listeners to understand that it's already, what it would do is it would deport people accused of crimes. And that is a crazy slippery slope. I mean, I get the popularity of like, anyone accused of a crime, I'm going to throw them out of the country. For someone like you and me who have great suspicion of an overarching government, I'm going to accuse you of a crime and use that as a grounds to deport someone. That is a horrible. And by the way, and they included shoplifting in there. Like, I'm going to accuse you of shoplifting. What if the manager at Target just doesn't like you and accuse you of shoplifting? And next thing you know, you're being deported somewhere.
Well, but correct me if I'm wrong, but these are illegal migrants who face that increased threat of deportation, correct?
Yes and no. These are
in essence,
people,
it's making it easier for them to be deported because they're accused of a crime.
No, it is. Some of the people are going to be included in this are people who are here lawfully have asked for asylum. because it says unless you've got documents or 2 years or you're under different. The whole point would be there's going to be
still be an illegal migrant and have requested asylum. It happened a lot over the last 4 years.
And I just want to stress this. I know it's a common misconception, so I'll explain. When you request asylum, that in the law today, and Trump is going to try to change it, but he needs Congress to do it. In the law today, if you are on U.S. soil or even in U.S. waters, if you're on U.S. soil, U.S. waters, and you say to an official of the government, I request asylum, just say those words, then you get a hearing. And the hearings are wildly backed up now, but for that period of time, until you have your hearing, you are here lawfully. That's the asylum law. That's the law that we need to fix right there. Okay? But so now they're saying being accused of a crime. So I get and I don't know how I would have voted because to some degree I think Democrats have to be behind fixing some of these things.
Yeah,
but I don't think being accused is a high enough standard. It never has been before.
There's a part of me that is sympathetic to that, but at the same time, I think that if you are seeking asylum, let's say, or in a situation where you're under a certain unique circumstance and you feel it's really important for you to be here, how about let's avoid committing crimes?
I 100% agree with you. But what if you are, let's take an example. What if you're an undocumented person on their way to work, you walk past where Trump Tower, where a bunch of people are protesting, I hate Donald Trump, and the New York City cops round everyone up and give everyone a summons. Theoretically, you can then be deported.
And I'm sure I'll read an article about that in the New Yorker.
Right, that's the point. The point is that one of the reasons we have due process rights for everyone in this country is so that we know who the good guys are and the bad guys are. We don't just take an accusation. Accusations are not enough to put people away. They should not be enough to deport them and take them away from their families when they're otherwise here. But I look, here's the problem. The asylum, this question of how you fix this, this is what Donald Trump had 4 years to fix, never did. This is what Congress was trying to fix when they made that deal. They never could. This is what Donald Trump has to fix today. He has to go to Congress and say, let's fix the asylum laws. An easy fix between you and me, you've got to come in at a point of entry. You got to show you came in at a point of entry. Not for nothing, this is not on the rundown either. We used to have an app under Biden to say, don't just wander across the border. If you're coming, let us know. And we'll get you the appointment. You don't have to flood over in between. We're going to make it more orderly.
You're talking about the CBP1 app or whatever?
So it went from 200,000 in December of last year to 40,000 December of this year.
Yeah, I mean, again, the problem with what you're talking about is that if you have that app where all you have to do is check a box on an app and then basically hit submit and you're in, and there's no way that anybody could ever actually check up on whether or not you're supposed to show up for that hearing for asylum or whatever. It's de facto illegal immigration.
That's what is happening now, though. The only question is how we process all those people and make them not come across the border in an undocumented fashion.
Remain in Mexico is a good policy.
Well, remain in Mexico is a perfectly fine policy. So here it is. We're about a week into the administration. How come remain in Mexico isn't started yet?
I thought that was one of the executive orders.
No, you can't say to Mexico we're going to remain in Mexico. Mexico has to agree to it, and she has said,
oh, well,
F you.
All
right. So let's go
on comes the trade war.
Yeah, we already had the 10% increase in your avocados. Good luck, Chipotle. Enjoy yourself.
No,
Enjoy making America cheaper again.
That's when 8 in 10 of Mexico's exports go to the United States, they actually don't have the leverage to just say all prices are going to go up onto the consumer.
Do you eat avocado?
I do, as a matter of fact.
Okay,
yeah.
Enjoy your lower inflation. Oh, by the way, the stock market hit a record level. I guess it's because they're looking forward to Donald Trump leaving office.
I don't understand.
Yeah, I thought you wouldn't. Every time I would talk about the stock market going through the roof under Biden, you're like, because they know he's going to be gone soon. Well, now the stock market.
Oh, you're going back to November after the election?
Oh, you guys did it from the first year.
I don't even understand what you're saying.
Here it is. I know it's a little bit of a walk. So, and we don't have a lot of time. So all throughout the Biden administration,
right? Everybody always blames this, that, the other.
I would quote the statistics, how amazing the economy is doing, how great the stock market is doing. And every once in a while, I don't know if you've done it, but other people would say, yeah, that's because they know that Donald Trump is coming in a couple of years and they're investing. That's ridiculous.
But you realize that in terms of like the market rise since November, Wall Street veterans who don't identify as Republican or Democrat have said there's a lot of optimism for the Trump administration cutting regulations.
Which is the same reason the bond market is tanking, because they know that you guys are going to drive up the deficits again. Yes, no, totally. I get it. My only point is, watch. We're going to have a good jobs number one of these days. And I'm going to sit here and say, I don't believe the job numbers. They're cooking the books, just like you jackasses did for the last 4 years. I'm going to get it. I'm going to have my moment.
If they adjust it down, if 5 months later the Trump White House says, actually, we had 500,000 less jobs, then that'd be fair.
Good. That's because that happens every October. So I'll be there. I'll be there waiting to say, I don't believe these numbers. That's like, come on. Yeah. All right, let's do one more thing. It's a local issue. We like to finish on local things. Eric Adams in the House joins the party. On the day of Martin Luther King's birthday, which was the way most of the country was celebrating, not that your cult leader has gotten another term, but Eric Adams says, here's the story, at 1 o'clock in the morning, gets a call, gets in his car, drives down, sits in the overflow room, is there for the inaugural. Do you have a problem with any of that?
I mean, I think what Adams is going through right now is very obvious, very heavy-handed. He's very clearly trying to make political allies with Trump in a bid to potentially secure a pardon. I don't think there's any question that that's what's going on. In terms of Adams, attending the inauguration, I don't really necessarily have any problem with that. I feel like there's a lot of local officials and maybe some local constituents who are offended that he, as the second black mayor of New York City, did not attend those events in New York City honoring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., but I don't know. As far as the intrigue with him, supposedly he wants to be a Republican or all this kind of thing, I just don't think that Adams has a political future at this point. He's done a bad job as mayor. He's under indictment for federal bribery, allegedly, and I think he's at the end of the line. Yeah,
I don't have a problem with him going. I don't have a problem with him going, except when you're the mayor of the city of New York, you are a spokesman for urban areas all across the country. That means you stand up for migrants, you stand up for economic development in cities. I don't have a problem going to a ceremony. As a matter of fact, I seem to remember that I went to ceremonies when Rudy Giuliani was sworn in, when Bloomberg was sworn in. I don't think that act is any way offensive. Yes, it was a scheduling thing that he was expected to be other places. And yes, it was transparent as part of his suck-up campaign. That's my beef. My beef about the posture should be, I stand for New York City. I'm not standing for myself, but I don't have any problem with him.
Well, I mean, attending the inauguration of the president is certainly standing up for New York City.
I guess so.
You can stand up for migrants and be against illegal.
You know who should have had a bigger role at the inaugural? Who would have really added something? Our own Vinny Medugno. Take it away, Vinny.